I was hired on in 2020 in March, right when it all went down. Yeah, lots of changes, but just the same as anyone migrating to any new country, you have those challenges because you don't know what to expect. I think you just have to, accept those challenges and work through them and find the best possible solution that you can probably find in that type of scenario. I was born and raised in Zimbabwe. My mom was a nurse and my dad worked for the Board of Education. And so growing up in that household, I always knew somewhere deep down that I probably want to work in an industry where I can serve my community. I moved over to South Africa where I did the post-secondary. So I think I got a chance to kind of see cultures from two different African countries. I think it was a good opportunity to see how those communities interact with the police. When the country became independent in 1980, policing in Zimbabwe was still respected, but because of the leadership over the years, policing began to deteriorate. It became more of a political agenda, so people began to lose trust. There was always corruption, a lot of bribes. South Africa, it's no different. South Africa went through the apartheid era, whereby a lot of people from visible minorities were suppressed. And when I was living in that country for about 4 years, I realized that the police force there wasn't really there to help. If you were stopped by a police officer that was white, I would say, and you were black, your antennas would go up because you wouldn't know exactly what type of interaction you would have. And this dates back to slavery. A lot of slaves, like it or not, were black. It was always, how can we keep the slaves from running away? And so if I look at policing from that avenue, I would say policing was brought up to say, okay, let's find ways that we can contain the visible minorities, which is the black slaves. It's no fault of anyone, it's just history. So I was there until the year of 2000, and then I moved over to Canada in 2001, settled in Toronto. When I moved here, I expected that, this is a developed country. I think policing here will be so much better. But within a week of being in Toronto, we were stopped by police officers, and they were all white. They were talking to us as if we didn't belong in that area. My friend's name is Justice. I mean, they all laughed and they were like, oh, Justice, are you trying to be a judge or something? By them saying that, are you trying to incite something within us, right? Are you trying to make us say something and then maybe you can then have an excuse to do something else? Having that interaction, I thought to myself, well, maybe this is not different from Africa. It didn't give me that motivation to want to be in law enforcement. Even though I had an uncle in law enforcement, I had my mom who was a nurse. In my mind, I was like, I don't think I want to work for this organization if this is the way they treat people. This is the way they treat people of visible minority. And that would take some years before it would change. And actually, it took until I moved to Calgary. And then I started working at SAIT. I happened to have ex-CPS members that were working at SAIT, and they were all Caucasian. And they took me under their wing. They mentored me. And so I thought to myself, if these guys who are not even members of the visible minority can look at me and tell me that, hey, you know what? You can do it. I thought if I joined CPS and I had anything to contribute from my cultural background, then I'm up for it. I found it to be fair, and I would like to think that I did get in here on my own merit. I'm relatively new on the job, and since I started, I cannot say I've seen any sort of racism towards me, but I'm not going to say that it's not there. The George Floyd issue, I think, brought out a lot of these things within people. People started to talk about race, about equality. When I was in classes, I had an opportunity to sit with one of my sergeants and just talk about what is called white privilege. I've always known it all my life and I've seen it too, is the color of the skin matters. And white privilege is when someone who's of a different color of skin gets afforded an advantage just because of their skin. It's hard to solve because it's inbred, something deeper that needs to be looked at and kind of understood. And I think the only way to understand is to talk to someone that has actually experienced it. The fact that you had a Caucasian police officer having a knee on the black man's back, this white police officer with power, with authority, and here you have this black man and who doesn't have any power, doesn't have any authority. And it looks like there's no one paying attention to what the black person is saying. Even though he's pleading for mercy, pleading for help, it's kind of goes through one ear and comes out the other. So I think what black people or people from visible minorities really want is to be heard. Some people have grown up with blinders on. They've never really interacted with people from different races. And so if you haven't done that, then I can't blame you because you don't know any different. And it goes both ways too. People from visible minorities, they might be racially biased towards other races too. You know, I might look at a white person and think, you know what, that white person hates black people. I find that most people of visible minorities, when they look at a uniform, maybe they don't see color there. Maybe they just see white. Maybe they see something with authority that can, you know, I guess, take action against them. And when you think that way, every police officer is the same, which is not true. I was patrolling with my coach. We happened upon a black individual at a gas station. So we parked and he came to my side of the window, which was the passenger side. And he goes on for, I would say, at least 2 minutes. He's talking to us. And only after a while, he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, you're black." He's not seeing black. He's seeing uniform, and because of maybe his background or whatever he's experienced, he thinks this is all white. And then he starts saying, "Oh, my black brother, you know, thank you for your service." So that changed a lot of things. The conversation changed from then on. I think the reason why we don't have more black officers is we need more education in the communities, and not just having black people or people from visible minorities go to these communities. I think that's a given, but let's have other people, let's have everybody, because then it shows that we're just not one-sided. It shows that we as an organization are willing to work together. When we do more of that, we encourage people from different backgrounds, visible minorities, to maybe even look at this organization and say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe I want to work for CPS." Black History Month is more of an awareness campaign, trying to educate the rest of the world what black people went through. Retired CPS member Neville, for example, it's because of people like him. They have really paved the way. We should always be learning about each other's cultures. We should always be learning about each other's ethnic backgrounds. Every person from the visible minorities that has joined the Calgary Police Service before me, I think they've each individually and collectively made a difference. If it wasn't for them, I don't think I'll be sitting here right now having this conversation with you. I know I can't change the world, but one person at a time, one call at a time, and you know, that's all we can ask for on this job.